Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of People Talking from a Social Distance. I didn't do my homework and this was the only hat I had available, so that's why I'm wearing this stupid hat for this episode. Today I have a wonderful guest, someone who wears multiple hats, someone who's I haven't had as much time to talk with as I would like to, but we always have good conversations. So today I have parent, educator, and I hear she's pretty good at volleyball and softball as well. It's Sarah Chapman.
Hi Greg, thanks for having me today.
Yeah. So before we get into the questions, I know, and I don't know if everyone's aware of this, but you have a very interesting undertaking to have decided to start during a global pandemic.
Yes, and you're actually going to jump to the answers I have here for one of those questions, but I can kind of briefly touch on it. Yes, my husband decided what better way to kind of celebrate being in a pandemic than becoming homeless. So we decided, and this is something we had talked about for a very long time doing. And again, my husband came home one day. Actually, I remember the day specifically. It was September 4th. It was a Friday. He came home and he said, "We're tearing the house down," as I was cooking dinner. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, yes, let me just continue making dinner, pretend like you really didn't just say that we're tearing our house down." But yeah, he was like, "We're tearing our house down." And I said, "Okay, when is this happening?" And he says, "ASAP." So we lived in probably, I would say roughly like an 1,800 square foot, 2,000 square foot house, with two little kids. And, when your husband says we're tearing this thing down ASAP, you go into oh crap mode and you start just packing as much as you can. So yeah, the house came down on October 26th. So just a little over a month, we got everything packed up and moved out, and it's been pretty insane, to say the least, for the last 4 months or so.
Well, yeah, and so when you first said it, I went, because English teacher, I went straight to Walden, right? Like simplify, go out into the woods. But yep. It seems like it was more of like a oh crap.
Yeah, no, it was, it was pretty instant. We had always joked back and forth, my husband and I, for a long time. We lived in it was over 100 years old, big farmhouse. We had huge cracks in the foundation. We had I called them the stairs of death, from the top floor to the bottom floor, that were super steep. I mean, they were steep in general, but then my husband's older relatives, who we initially inherited the house from, decided to put carpet over the already steep stairs. So not only were the stairs steep, the landing spaces on the stairs were very, very small. And so they were not very fun. They were very dangerous. I was always afraid that my children were going to fall down them. Sometimes they actually did fall down them. So yes, I had told them for many years, I said, we just need to get rid of this thing. Like we talked about it all the time. Let's just do it. You just got to bite the bullet. He's a man of, if you can't pay cash for it, it's not something you should have. And I, tried to drill in his mind how money actually works. And when things like that happen, you can't just spend, nobody has $300,000 just sitting in their pocket waiting to, build a new house. So we made an agreement actually this past summer. We were stranded at home forever during COVID. So we had lots of time to talk about these things. And we came up with an initial agreement of, he says, if you let me buy this motorcycle, you will have a new house in 26 months. And I said, fine. 26 months is better than never. So I said, fine, go for it. So he found a really good deal on this Harley motorcycle that he has wanted for a long time. And so then I was like, sold. I'm ready to go. 26 months, I'll have a new house. And then, so that was in July. And then when he came home in September and was like, all right, here we go. I was like, oh boy, I'm not ready for this. Even though we knew this was going to happen. Like, you can't just spring stuff like that on me. And I mean, in the long run, I'm super grateful. I'm super thankful that, we are able to have this opportunity. And he actually is building it himself. So he's a construction vice president over at a construction company in DeKalb. And so I guess kind of the perk is like his boss is letting it become a job site. So he's actually getting paid to build our house, which is kind of a sweet gig. But yeah, it's stressful, and home life is not exciting because I live with my mother-in-law, and then I live with my parents, and then we're back and forth all the time. So it's not all it's cracked up to be when you move back in with your parents, folks. They expect you to do a lot more stuff now that you're an adult. It's not fun.
Fair enough. Well, I wish you well with that. I'm sure it'll turn out great.
Thank you.
First place I like to go with these interviews, and again, people who are listeners know where I'm going. I find that people in education, it's a large part of who they are, is wanting to be an educator, being involved in education. But if you were asked to apply a label to yourself outside of your profession, what would that be and why?
So I initially came up with two things that I kind of wanted to talk about here. The first one being mom, as many of the other female people that you've had on this talk show. Mom is, like I think Mary said it best, the greatest role I've ever had in my life, being a mom. I have two beautiful little girls. They are 3 and 1.5. And my 1.5-year-old is the same size as my 3-year-old. She is massive, and she's going to be, I think she's definitely going to be my athlete, my person that causes me all of my gray hair. She's very stubborn like her father. And, I love them both dearly. And I love, being able to watch them grow and experience these new things. Like, they're at a super fun age right now where they're so inquisitive and they just want to know and do everything. And sometimes I'm like, okay, like you can't do this. Like, my 3-year-old told me the other day, she's like, Mom, when I'm older, like next year at my birthday, can I get a car? Can I drive? I'm like, no. You'll be lucky when you're 16 if I let you do that, depending on, what's going on in the world. But yeah, she's just like, oh yeah, I want to do this. And can you buy me all sorts of makeup? I'm like, who are you? Like, what? This is not what I signed up for. Like, I don't want you need to stay little forever. But unfortunately that's not how the world works. And, but they're a blast. And then the second thing I said, another label that I would put on myself is coach. You said it in the introduction. I coach the sophomore volleyball team here, and I'm the assistant varsity softball coach. 2-year defending state champ. Nobody's taken it from us yet. So I wish that Chauncey would, put that on the trophy, but I don't think I could get him to swing that. But I feel like the role of mom, the role of coach, and the role of teacher all just kind of meld together. As a mom, you care for your children, you would do anything for them. And I feel like my role as a teacher, some of the students I, work with, I feel like I would do anything for them. I actually have some students here that, as a special ed teacher, have been on my caseload since they were freshmen. They actually call me mom. Like, they call me Mama Chapman. They call, they come to me, they're always bothering me like they are my own children. And same thing with coaching, those kids that I get to see in that light too, I would do just about anything for them. So it's really interesting, like you said, wearer of many hats, to see, okay, not only do I have special ed kids that I am in charge of, I also get to see gen ed kids in my co-taught classrooms. And then I get to see just some of our brightest students here at Sycamore, on the playing field, whether it's volleyball or softball or anything else. So I think it's really cool that I get to experience kind of the realm of people that Sycamore has to offer. So I really like that.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry that I stole your thunder so much in the introduction. I apologize.
Hey, it's all good.
I do feel for you that idea of, so like obviously with my last name and so many kids not being able to say it, it got shortened to Dad for quite some time.
Yes, I love it.
Weird as a young teacher, right? When I was 22 and I had seniors, it was like,
yeah,
not enough of an age difference there. But yeah, I get where that comes from. So that, I guess, leads into another question that I'm always interested to hear about, and that's What I love about teaching and what I love about education is it allows me a place to sort of foster my passions. It gives me a place and an outlet for some of the stuff that I would be doing anyway. It's just now I get paid for it. So do you have an example of maybe one or more ways that your profession has helped you sort of shape or foster or enlighten your passions?
So when I read this question, my mind kind of went a different direction. And it brought me back to the moment I knew that I wanted to be a teacher. And I was in 6th grade, and I had this teacher. His name was Mr. Deutsch, very, very foreign, Mr. Deutsch. But he was my math teacher. I obviously love math. But it was more than just how he taught math for me. It was, again, how he treated his students, how he, would, again, go above and beyond for them. My mother actually has ulcerative colitis, or Crohn's. And so when I was in 6th grade, she had a pretty nasty flare-up, to where she was hospitalized for 2 weeks. And my dad worked a union job. He was gone 8 to 5 every day. So he was able to get us to school. But then Mr. Deutsch actually took it upon himself to stay after school. My brother got bussed over from one of the elementary schools. And he knew that we love sports, and he would take us to the gym. We'd shoot baskets, we'd do, and sometimes he'd include like other kids too, just say, hey, we're holding this thing. So it didn't feel like he was singling my brother and I out. But I thought that was really cool that he, kind of took it upon himself to say, hey, I know you guys are going through a rough time, any way I can help, I will. And like I said, it was about 2 weeks, every day after school, he was there till 5. I mean, he was a young teacher. He wasn't married yet, anything like that. But we developed a really good relationship with him and my family. And, as the years passed, we went and visited him and his wife when they had their first baby in the hospital. And it was just seeing that when he was willing to do that for me, that's when I was like, yeah, I want to be able to do that for other people. So along the way, as I started doing, when I was in high school, I took those like TA classes and things like that. And throughout the years, I kind of took on the role of like special ed. That's what I want to do. But I think I did that because this is one of the positions where I can help families and be there for families the most. So that's where I went with that question. But yeah, I because of Mr. Deutsch and how he treated me and helped us in that time of need is kind of how I grew to have this passion of being able to help kids in this type of environment. So
that's a great answer. You gave me something for season 3, right? I can add that question because I think most educators have some story like that, right? There was someone who they were like, I saw what this person was doing and I understood that that's what I wanted to do with my life as well. That's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. All right. So the next place we go, I am a huge, like I put this question in mainly because I want to get more stuff from people. And that's, I think what you recommend, whether it's a movie, whether it's a book, whether it's a show, whether it's an album, says so much about the way that we view the world and the stuff that we're interested in. So if you were to give a suggestion, and it can be any of those things, books, movies, shows, albums, that you either think people would enjoy or that you think in some way sort of cues people into the way that you sort of view the world around you, what would that recommendation be and why?
So again, it took me a while to kind of figure out what I wanted to say for this question. But I went to an author just because I don't read a whole lot just because, a teacher, coach, multiple sports, 2 little kids, it's hard. But when I do have time to read, I always find myself going to Jodi Picoult. I started reading her when I was in high school, and I instantly became hooked. My favorite book of hers is called House Rules. It's about a young man who has Asperger's syndrome, which is a part of the autistic spectrum. Again, my special ed hat here. And it's about, so again, this young man with Asperger's syndrome is obsessed with crime TV shows, like serial killer stuff, like, and that's, people with autism, they just get fascinated with things like that and they get hooked. And in the story, they actually find his, I don't want to call her a babysitter because he's older, he's in high school, but another young adult that kind of supervises him while his parents are gone, and they end up finding her dead, and the kid's fingerprints are over everything. So it's a huge, and one thing I like about Jodi Picoult is all of her books have some sort of court case. And so it goes into this huge court case on whether or not this young man killed his, his caretaker. And one reason I really like her stuff is because she always tries to shine light on both sides of the story. One of her most famous books is My Sister's Keeper, about, a young girl who was essentially like artificially made with the same DNA that her sister has to become her sister's personal donor for bone marrow. And, it was again, the huge court case on whether or not this was ethical. This poor girl didn't have a choice in her life. But like I said, I enjoy reading her just because it's intriguing. And so it makes it a fast read for somebody who doesn't have a whole lot of time. And I just love the idea of her being able to take topics that are so, like, I guess, debatable, and really show both sides of the spectrum. Like, another one of my favorites from her is called 19 Minutes, about a school shooting. And just kind of how, being an educator, that one really hit home too. So, yes, Jodi Picoult is my author recommendation. And like I said, I could babble forever, but, if you're looking for something easy to read, I definitely would recommend her.
Well, and I think that's great because she is super prolific. Interesting topics, like you'd often think for someone who writes in her style, you'd be like, oh, it's fluff. It's never fluff. There's always something heavy going on. She actually has a really awesome speech she's given about censorship and sort of like when she first started writing, they were like, oh, you'll never be able to write these types of things because people won't want to hear it. And she was like, screw you, this is my truth and this is what I'm interested in. And so it's a great example of an author just sort of being like, I don't care how commercially successful I am. This is what nurtures my soul. And I think whenever you find authors like that, there's always something that you can connect with. Yeah.
And I was just looking at her, because of this question, I was just looking at her new releases. And in the last couple of years, she released one about race that I think is really interesting. It's about a nurse, an African-American nurse who works on a NICU unit, and the parents come in and say, I don't want this nurse dealing with my child. And of course the nurse is just like, okay. And then something terribly goes wrong with the child, and the nurse has to decide, do I save this child or do I not? And so that's definitely on my next to read. So it, and she tries to keep her topics relevant to what's kind of going on in the country. And I think she does a really great job with that. So
excellent choice. Next place we go is just, I think, again, working in the situation we're in, especially in the socially distanced situation we're in, it's easy for us to just sort of take people at their face value, right? Like, here's what I know about this person, here's what they've told me about them. But I always want to know either a surprising fandom or activity. What's something that like we would never guess if you didn't tell us?
Well, and I know that there's some people here that do know this, just because they know the names of my children. And this came more from, I enjoy him too. I actually wrote a speech about him in high school, which, not very many people do. But my husband is 100% all the way in obsessed with Sir Elvis Presley. So, for those of you who don't know, my 2 children, my oldest name is Grace. We were going to name her Grace Lynn. And then my husband's like, well, you know, I don't want people to think I'm obsessed with Elvis. To which my response is, but you are. And so we ended up changing her middle name to Elizabeth. But Grace definitely for, you know, Elvis's home, Graceland. And then when we had our second child, my husband was like, all right, I'm in. And her name is actually Presley. So, you know, so much for not being afraid that people know that you're obsessed with him. So we just, you know, her name is Presley. Her name is actually Presley Marie. Only if our last name was Lisa, it would be nice backwards. But I mean, I grew up listening to Elvis. My dad was a huge fan of Elvis. So I mean, I know his songs, and then when I met my husband, he was kind of like, he didn't want me to know that he was obsessed with Elvis at first, and then it just kind of like, so we met in the summer, and then on August 6th, it was August 16th. You know, I came and I, you know, was hanging out with him, and he was just so somber and just like, oh, I'm like, what's going on, dude? And he's like, it's a day of mourning. I'm like, why? What happened? And he goes, well, Elvis died on this day. I'm like, all right, we're in it. We're in it to win it. So, you know, we actually had an Elvis themed wedding. When we got married, it wasn't, I mean, some people who are listening were probably there, but it wasn't super like Elvis in your face. You know, we had some 45s, just some couple of subtle Elvis references. But yeah, no, I married into the Elvis fanatic life here, and we celebrate every year on January 8th. We mourn every year on August 16th. It's just part of our lives. Yeah, we named our children after Elvis Presley. And that's.
So the real question is, in the new house, it's a Graceland facade, right? Like you're building.
Of course. Yes. No. I asked him if we could have a jungle room. He said no. You know, I really enjoy the carpet on the ceilings, and we've been to Graceland twice since we've been together, and I mean every time it feels like it's brand new just because it's so cool. But you know, he has in his office. His new office will be full of his Elvis decor. I told him he could keep all of his Elvis decor. Everything that he wants to put that'll be Elvis will be in his office. I mean, at our old house, his office was still Elvis, but we had like Elvis posters in our, like big framed posters in our living room, in the dining room, in the kitchen. And I'm just like, okay, we just got to centralize Elvis. As much as I love Elvis too, we just gotta put him in one spot. So I guess for those of you that didn't know, my husband and I are obsessed with Elvis.
Fantastic. I'm always excited with those answers, but that one is definitely the one that I've been most blown away with. Like,
yeah, come on. I mean, nobody else will name their kids after somebody that they're obsessed with. Yeah.
Next place we go is sort of a dealer's choice. And so I'm excited, the 2 questions that you decided to answer. First one, and people who've been watching know that I'm a big foodie, but you wanted to talk about a favorite restaurant. So what's your favorite restaurant? So
again, I am not shy to any sort of food. I love food, love all sorts of food. Mexican food is probably my favorite type of food. But my favorite restaurant of all time is Arthur's Deli. I don't know if you've ever heard of Arthur's Deli. It's more towards like, I think the closest one to here is, I think, Dixon. So there's like one in Dixon, Sterling, Rock Falls, and then towards the Quad Cities. But I mean, they've got these huge deli sandwiches or soups, sides, They also do baked potatoes, like huge baked potatoes with all the good stuff on top. And every time we're that way, like I always have to say, we're stopping at Arthur's. They're closed on Sundays, though. I have learned that over the years. To which, if you're a teacher and the only time you have to travel is the weekends, sometimes you end up that way on a Sunday, and then your whole day is ruined because you can't go to Arthur's. But it's probably just because they have such an array of choice that it's so good.
I used to, before I made the dietary changeover, I was like delis were where it was like, if you got a corned beef sandwich, I am there. Like when we would go east, we would go through Cleveland, so we could stop at Slyman's Deli to get a corned beef sandwich. Like I'm right there with it. As much as you guys loved Elvis, that was me with corned beef. So I totally get where you're coming from with the deli situation. Like makes total sense to me. Awesome. The other question you decided to answer, and again, it's one that I'm really excited about. I always say teachers are lifelong learners, right? People in education are lifelong learners, but especially in this situation that we have with COVID and with the quarantine, I think we've all been able to learn some new things. So what's something you learned recently that you'd love to share with us?
So again, I'm going to hop back to the intro of, building a new house. And so something I've been able to do over, the last 4 months that we've been building is just kind of be a part of that process. And I have learned, like, you think, oh, you're building a house, you just got, you got to do this, this, and this. But there are so many things like behind the scenes of like, you got to make sure that your foundation concrete does this before it does that. And I'm excited to, when we get more into the inside, the interior of the stuff, learning how to, I've done it before with him on small projects, but then he usually just gets mad at me and tells me to go away. But like hanging drywall, doing all of those things, painting. I never really had an opportunity to do stuff like that, growing up. So I'm excited to continue learning for that. So far I've been able to, put plywood on a roof, for the shingles to come on. I, helped, build the walls with the studs and things like that, put the subfloor on. So I'm excited to continue learning how to do those types of things. Not that in my lifetime I will ever build another house, but just to know how to do it and the different steps in the process that comes along with it, I think is just really cool. And it's nice to see, like, I know what my husband does for a living, so it's not that I'm clueless as to what he does, but to actually see him like do it is super cool. And it's something that, we're both really excited to be able to tell. I mean, the kids are old enough now that they can see him doing it, but like as they get older and, once they have kids and, to let them know that, hey, we did this, I think is going to be so cool.
That's awesome. That's a great answer to that question. Like I said before, I'm super stoked for you guys. I hope to continue to see, or at least hear in passing, the progress. It's a big move to make in this situation, but I think you guys.
It was just, like I said, we were so good during the pandemic. Like he still had to go to work, but the kids and I, we never left the house. I think March 17th, I had to take Presley to the doctor, and then we never left the house again until like that last weekend in May. And I was stuck at home with these two kids, and, Sean would go to work and he'd come back, and we didn't see my parents. We didn't see my mother-in-law, except it was through a window. And then, and just because we were trying to be so careful. And then all of a sudden it's like September, and he's like, okay, we're doing this. We're moving out. And I'm like, well, where are we going to live? Like, we've been so good, like trying to keep our bubble small. And at that point we had been seeing them and like being at their houses and things like that, but like we still weren't letting the kids like spend the night or do anything like that. And he's just like, well, guess we're just gonna have to do it, like move in and break the stay-at-home rule. I'm like, oh, okay, you know, whatever you say, man. I'm like, I get. I mean, I'm glad we did, and I'm super thankful that we have my mother-in-law and my parents to, you know, be there to support us and things like that. Just because, it would be really hard if we were having to, you know, move all of our stuff somewhere else and live in a totally different setting for, you know, 10 months or however long it's going to take us. But definitely ready for my house to be done.
26 was the originally quoted number of months, right?
Months, correct. Well, right. I really hope he doesn't throw that back in my face. By the time he started, we were down to like 23 months.
Okay.
But definitely not having my own space is hard. So I really hope it doesn't take the 23 months he was allowed still. But regardless, you know, we're super excited, and I'm very thankful to have one level. We decided to go with a ranch, and I'm very excited about that. No more stairs of death or anything like that my kids could fall down. So we're excited. We've also, for anybody listening that has young children, we have a huge basement now that is unfinished, that is just going to be concrete. We are going to be starting scooter races. If you want to, you know, sign your kids up for something like that, just hit me up. I can't promise that Presley won't take them out though. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for your time. This has been an awesome chat. Like I said, we don't get enough time to talk individually.
No.
This has been great.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for your great answers, and just hope that this was enjoyable for you, because I definitely enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for having me, and I really enjoyed, you know, listening to everybody's, you know, questions and their answers, and I think what you got going on here is really great, and I really hope that more people jump on the bandwagon, as they say, and, you know, want to share their lives with us too. So
thank you for that endorsement. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, bye.